Secret is one of the most iconic parts of Nuke, but did you know that before 2013, Secret was not actually here? In fact, for a little while, Secret didn't exist, period. In the first version of Nuke for CSGO, Secret was removed from the game entirely, with vents and ramp being the only ways to access the B-site. Before this, Secret was actually located behind a garage in this weird corner of the map. The remnants from when Secret used to be here still existed up until the 2018 remake of Nuke, with the weird corner that served no purpose still existing in the game until then, despite that passageway not existing for 6 years and Nuke receiving 2 major overhauls in this time. CS is so old, and while the absolute classic maps that we know, like Dust 2 and Mirage, have stayed relatively the same, most maps have changed a lot over this time. So in this video, I'm going to cherry pick my favorite weird cut parts of maps. This video is brought to you by SkinsMonkey, a site where you can easily and safely trade your skins. With SkinsMonkey, you can instantly swap out your old skins and get something new. You can use code PENGUIN on the site to get 2 new things. First off, you get a free $5 after you complete your first trade with a maximum bonus if you spend $100 on the site, and secondly, you get a 5% bonus when adding balance to the site. Combined with the 30% deposit bonus SkinsMonkey offers already, there's an extra 35% for you to spend, making their offers very competitive. Follow my link in the description or the pinned comment and start trading today. Inferno is another one of those maps that has stayed relatively the same all these years, but it's still quite jarring playing the old versions of the map and seeing Bedroom right here next to Window Room. This position was always very awkward to play. It had this weird breakable wood section too, just all around a strange decision. Also, side note, can we just admit how terrible this Inferno was in comparison to the modern map? The pillars on Banana made this part of the map abysmal to traverse. The same could be said about a number of positions on the A half of the map. Honestly, I do give Valve credit for vastly improving this map with the remake. Similar to how on Nuke that little corner stayed in the map despite its initial purpose being removed, graffiti on Overpass was not always just the strange corner of A-site that it is now. Initially, these doors were open and led to part of Connector. I could and probably will make an entire video on Overpass. This map has changed so much that there isn't a way for me to summarize briefly everything that has changed since its initial release. One thing that took a strangely long time to change is the way that the A-site works. For a long while after the map released, Long dumped out here rather than where it does today, combining the route from bathrooms and Long. There was also this weird little house that you could go through that really didn't serve any purpose and was kind of just there. The weird thing about old Overpass that I hate to admit, because I feel like this is unpopular, is that I kind of get the ideas that they were trying to do and I like them. They just didn't work out, you know? And some of the ideas that I think are pretty cool are mixed in with a lot of the worst ideas imaginable. For instance, I actually like how this room exists. I feel like even though it didn't end up doing this, it was meant to serve a sort of Inferno church type of role, where it's a secluded weird position adjacent to the site that CTs can play super passively from and can help retake. But it didn't pan out that way, and it ended up just not playing a role at all for one reason or another, and as such it was removed. And that's kind of why I like Overpass a lot. It was the testing grounds for a lot of new interesting ideas. Train has changed a ton, and the biggest changes have happened on and around the A-site. The most jarring change being the removal of T-Heaven, a second ladder spot across from CT-Heaven. Now, don't get me wrong, I think that adding an elevated position is always incredibly silly, and I support it for that reason, but this was kind of weird. Speaking of weird, I've got a question for you guys. What do you call this back section on Train? I've always called it weird, but I'm learning that this isn't the universal callout at all. In fact, I have not heard anyone but me and my friends call this part of the map weird. Can anyone confirm or deny if one of my friends gaslit the rest of us into thinking this is a real call out? Thanks. Vertigo is a goddamn trip going back in time. Even just going back to the time when Vertigo was first reintroduced to CSGO in 2019, there is so much that just looks wrong. A-Main was so different, and does anyone remember this drop? Because I do. I remember, Valve. I remember all of the strange decisions that you've made in the past, and I intend to continue to bring them up. Speaking of, this weird jump window between mid and the B-site is another odd decision. It was so awkward to push through, but it was also awkward to hold, which is a hallmark of something that is not a good part of a map. If we go back even further, Vertigo surpasses the barrier of recognizability, with the layout of this map only giving like a deja vu feeling for some parts of the modern map, with most of it being completely foreign. You used to be able to jump from CT spawn into T spawn, though. That's pretty cool. Yeah. Cobble is another map that is really weird. In the first version of Cobblestone added to CSGO, honestly, I don't know what Valve was doing. You can't even blame this map's shortcomings on it being a port from CS Source, since this map was completely rebuilt for CSGO and a lot of the weird decisions are completely new. We talked about earlier how it's strange that Train had 2 heavens. Well, Cobble actually had 3. 2 spots for the Ts and 1 for the CTs. The weirdest, and in my opinion worst decision though, is this weird claustrophobic passageway near the B site. They just saw this archway and thought, it's time for some space efficiency. Let's add like 4 staircases and a bunch of stupid windows that are a pain to hold from. The B site as a whole is almost completely different from what we know now, with Long having this weird opening, a strange outer pavilion through these big arches, and just a generally different shape and vibe. I said earlier that Mirage is a map that hasn't had any of these huge changes, but I lied. The original version of Mirage, called Strike at the time, didn't have apartments. Instead, it had this weird staircase right here leading up to the B site. This is a strange trope that's common in maps of this era built for competitive play. Fire also has one on its B site. There were a few more silly little spots on Strike as well that I would appreciate if they brought back. I opened this video talking about Nuke, and I think it's only fitting to wind down with it as well, because the old versions of this map were, well, I'll just get into it. Before the most recent overhaul, Nuke featured the iconic outside catwalk as well as this window leading out of Hut. Both of these were long-standing staples of the map. Their removal fundamentally changed the DNA of Nuke and allowed it to become what it is today, maybe the best map in competitive Counter-Strike. In the very first version of the facelifted Nuke that Valve released in 2015, you could walk around this upper section. Also, Toxic still existed, this room that kind of just sat there. I don't know why, it was just kind of a thing that existed for a shockingly long time. With the aforementioned overhaul first released in 2016, Nuke changed a lot visually, but there weren't a ton of super interesting layout changes, other than sealing up CT vent. However, similar to Inferno, the general navigation of the map was improved a lot, and some slight changes to angles made the map feel a lot better, at least after a few more adjustments made after the visual overhaul. The initial version of the overhauled Nuke fucking sucked. Along with the previously mentioned issues, it had this weird ladder on the B site that messed with movement, as well as this ladder here that really screws over the feel of the A site, since Heaven is no longer such a secluded position. Also, these railings on B site are a sin. I mentioned at the start of this video how the position of Secret has changed over the years. What I didn't mention is where Secret used to lead to in the 1.6 version. The B site of Nuke in the 1.6 version looks fairly regular from this perspective, except that it has this door here that leads around the opposite side to a mirrored B site. This is very, very weird in retrospect. I think that the main takeaway that you should get from this is that making a map perfect on the first try is legitimately impossible. Even after countless hours of internal and external playtesting, a map will be absolutely torn to shreds once released to the public. This video isn't meant to be just me making fun of map makers. That's not what I'm doing at all. I just think it's fun to look back on the history of some of these maps that we hold dear nowadays that were so different in the past. In 5 years, when we look at our favorite CSGO maps in CS2, I doubt that they will be touched much, if at all. The complete overhaul of Overpass didn't really change anything in an ambitious way, just very small angle adjustments and positional changes. The same can be said for every other map that's been introduced in CS2 so far, and I would assume most of them going forwards. Instead, I think that Valve will focus far more of their resources on creating completely new maps, and as such, this might be the last time we're able to make a video like this that shows such immense changes. However, that really isn't a bad thing. Yeah, it means that we will probably have to say goodbye to a lot of our favorite maps in the professional pool, but it also means that we get to experience one of the coolest things in Counter-Strike more often, getting a feel of a new map, figuring it out in our minds. And when we're doing this, we need to stay open-minded, because, just like I said earlier in the video, making a map perfect on the first try is impossible. There are going to be rough edges, and the best thing that we can do as players is to flood these maps, to play them as often as possible. A river will change and erode the landscape and terrain around itself to find the most optimal path. Without the river, that landscape stays the same forever. Thank you. Alright, welcome to the Bonus Penguin, the Penguin DLC pack. I made this video, not that I didn't put a bunch of effort into it, I put a lot of effort into it as I always do. This video also kind of serves as a bit of a holdover for me, because I'm working on something a little bit cooler for my next video in my opinion. Also, I might be expanding into other forms of content pretty soon, so keep your eyes open. But yeah, I hope you guys like this one. Hit me with a comment. I'm trying to get better at actually responding to comments. I read a lot of them, but I don't actually like write a response to a lot of them or heart a lot of comments. So, you know, I'm trying to get my engagement up, kind of get better at engaging with you guys. So, you know. But yeah, leave a like if you like this one. Subscribe if you want to see more of this stuff in your sub box. And also, I've got cool stuff coming up. Like next week's video is really, really cool. So, you know, keep your eyes open for that one. But anyways, yeah, I will see you guys next week.